I honestly think not many thought it was possible, but Tower of God has truly done the impossible very early into the second core of season 2 because I have it's rare to see a fandom so divided on what the adaptation should have done. Some people saying we should have had much more time to flesh out the new cast. It would have solved a lot of the inconsistencies with people feeling like they're surface level. Other people saying, God damn it, it could have been cut even shorter. It's the setup just wasn't it. And then there's some people saying, what is everyone talking about? It was awesome. I loved every minute of it. You know, I used to think that, yeah, we needed more time to flesh out these characters to make me care about, because most of the new cast just wasn't doing it for me. But after seeing now, especially this episode, and seeing more of the season 1 cast interact, I'm glad we brushed through it, to be honest. And I never thought I'd say that, but yeah, like, this is better. And it's very frustrating because people... there's some ride or die enthusiasts for what the first core of season 2 did, and hey, listen, if you really enjoyed the first core, excellent, power to you, I'm happy for you. But if you unironically come up and say the only reason people are having fun now is that there's more action, there was action in the first core. That wasn't the issue. It had shit production, there was no chemistry with most of the cast, and the story they were trying to tell was just boring because, unfortunately, as cool as it is to have a character like Bam in this disguise mode and not be able to show emotion, when he's forced to deal with characters that he's never really interacted with, and most of them don't really have the personality to drive it, it's no surprise that when Coon is now interacting with those same characters, it's a much more organic interaction because there's more personality coming off of both sides. Now we're also getting into the thick of it of seeing Bam interact with characters, his friends, and having to keep up the facade. That is so much more interesting. Yes, the action is also better, but anyone who unironically thinks people are only enjoying maybe these past few episodes more because there's more action probably have more monkey brain takes than most people who would admit they only watch anime for action, and that needs to be said. Now, of course, you know I have full live reactions over on Patreon if you want to see my full length thoughts on any of these Tower of God episodes over there exclusively. I mean, I always want Tower of God to win. I mean, there was also people who said I should just drop it if I hate it so much, and honestly, I agree with most of that statements. If it was a new show, if this was a season 1, I would have dropped it. But when you have a connection to a series, you hope it succeeds, and thankfully they so far are. I saw a few people last week say they think a different it feels like a completely different studio took over. And while at face value, if you were to grab a random screen grab from this episode, random screen grab from, say, episode 6, is it a night and day difference at face value? No. But look at the conversation we had. I think it was literally the first scene we had in this episode, where Bam is, he's holding the flowers, and then Dorsey comes in, she's in her high heels, and just that minute and a half conversation, give or take, the characters are so much more expressive than most of what we got in the first half of this anime season. Just a lot more movement, and hell, even look at, say, the battle animation that we got. If you look at what we had even like 4 or 5 weeks back when everyone was throwing hands, we were in that cave and we had the whole dilemma of where we're going, a lot more just, here's the initial animation for like, here's my hand glowing, freeze frame, background moving, kind of connected. Sure, there still is that in this episode, but there's a lot more in between frames to get to those moments. It just feels like, my headcanon, the first core was literally not the priority, and all the priority went to the second half. That's what it makes sense to me, if I'm being honest. And I understand Tower of God apparently is no stranger to long setup arc, big epic, extra, like, making that setup worth it. But the thing is you have to have, if you're gonna have setup, you have to have those characters really pop. And characters like Wangnan absolutely enjoy. But I think, honestly, the big thing that held a lot of the characters back is that, they had to stand on their own 2 feet, and we're dealing with, like, a little kid, her nanny. It's like, those characters are not going to pop on their own. So, to have, your MC Bam, who in Season 1 was so personality-filled, having to be this, like, emotionless kind of husk of his former self because he's on mission, because if he screws around, his friends are going to die. That is a great story, but to have him have to bounce off of these characters. They are just standing tall by themselves, and honestly, I don't think they did a great job with that. But you look at the Coon interactions, I mean, in literally the last episode, we had that whole gag of him, like, making Wangdon think he was about to get killed because he needed the reaction to be genuine. Any of the interactions we saw in this episode are just so much better, but another thing that does make it more entertaining is now Bam is being forced out of his shell. Not only in the last episode did he admit his real name, not really sure if that's because he just wanted to be Bam finally and just have someone call him Bam, or he just knew this guy would not like the name Viole. Either way, interacting with Endorsi is a situation that he both wants and can't have all at the same time, so they have to throw some anti-tank personnel grenades at her bitch ass. And of course we have Anak as well, which at the end of this episode we hear 2 gunshots go off. I doubt it's both, because I thought what they were building into where they both were going to shoot each other at the same time. Now it feels like probably Anak shot at Bam and Bam shot her. Like, that's probably the direction we're going. I'm not sure though. But either way, like, all that stuff is so much more interesting. And that's why it's incredibly frustrating that there's some people who actually think the only reason people maybe enjoy the new stuff more is because there's more action. There was action in the first cour. The action in the first cour wasn't that great, if you ask me, both on production and I think just strategy. But just, the characters are so much more entertaining now. And seriously, if you disagree, I'd be shocked, but at this point, Coon's gotta be best boy. He quite literally brought out a cast of characters who just really didn't do much for me into all feeling way more entertaining because, you know, Coon's kind of like the father figure who can also be the biggest troll all in one. All I need now is Rack to come in and just scream turtles, and the season's 100 out of 10, let's be honest. Just so good. It's an interesting game. I think they did a great job in the previous episode. I mean, just everything that they're building up into this gun game. And honestly, the plans, the structure of everything, it's feeling good. It feels good to be back, because where Season 2 was going for me is that Tower of God was the least priority show to watch for me on a Sunday, because I just knew I was going to be disappointed. Tower of God has now become the priority on a Sunday because I'm actually having fun again. And you know what? I was one of the more positive voices at first, you know, when people were telling me, how could you praise this when the season started? And to be honest, I think I was into denial at the early points, but not anymore. Like, I think this is legitimately good. And to be honest, never thought I'd say this, I actually think Tower of God has reached a point that it's worth pushing through the first half of Season 2 to get to the content that we're now getting here. If this show falls off, though, I will, if they raise my hopes up only to crash them later into the season, that might be the dirtiest thing an anime's ever done. But I actually have full confidence that they just put the effort into the second half and not the first. Let me know what you're thinking down below. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new around here, of course, ring that bell, and like I mentioned, full live reactions over on Patreon, and hey, while you're over there, I'll just give you a video shout out. Alright, so today we got Joanne, Lady Killdragon, Matthew Prezeru, Kakyu, Laser, Anat, and we also have I-740. So I appreciate the support, everyone. Please take care, and y'all have a good one.